be anyone. Welcome to today's workshop. It's not the 5th, but it's another Wednesday workshop initiative by developerISH community. And today we have Austin Roy, who is going to talk to us about building GraphQL APIs using Post Graphile. So Austin Roy is a developer at Andela, and at least that's what I know about him. But he has a lot of things that he does. You'll find him very interesting. The guy has invested in gaming so much. I can't even believe it. I would have bought I would have bought a shamba, but yeah, he's that kind of guy. So he's very interesting, and he's ready to share his knowledge with us on GraphQL and Post Graphile. So just as we begin, we have polls to share with you. So just a minute. Okay, so we'll share the polls as we continue, so that you can vote as the workshop continues, and then you'll see the results when Austin is done. And also we have a YouTube live stream that's going on. We'll be expecting some questions from there also. This should be an interactive session. So thank you for coming and welcome again. Austin can take on.
Hi everyone. So just as Hoslak said, my name is Austin. I'm a front-end developer at Andela and Namely, and yeah, welcome to today's talk. We'll just be walking through some interesting things that I came across a while back. Yeah, so let's just get started. So just a second as I share my screen. Is everybody able to see what's on my screen?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, so today we'll just be walking through how to build GraphQL APIs using Post Graphile. So I know some of you may have heard of GraphQL and some of you may not. So I'll just be giving a brief introduction to GraphQL as well, and we'll be looking at how we can leverage this exciting open source library to set up your GraphQL APIs really quick. So I think one of the driving forces for this tool is to create easy backend setup for easy front-end usage. So about me, my name is Austin Roy. I'm a front-end developer at Namely and also a technical writer at Scotch.io and LogRocket. There's my Twitter handle. You can follow me over there and reach out if you have any other questions regarding anything that we cover today or anything that you may find interesting. Some people call me the resident pundit. I love for puns. I live for wordplay. So this link here is a link to these slides. You can feel free to just take a second and drop them in your browser, and you can follow along as we go through this talk. So the first question is, what is GraphQL? You may be wondering. So basically, GraphQL is it's a solution engineered by Facebook engineers to create easy to use backends and solve the problem of overfetching and underfetching data. This is done by allowing the user to specify the structure of the data that they require to use on the front end, and it makes the work of front-end developers a lot easier since they only need to fetch what they need to use, and it also makes the process of stitching together data for the backend developers a lot easier. Yeah. So why would you want to use GraphQL is another question that you may be wondering. It holds a lot of benefits over the REST architecture, and these four are some of them. You have an easier time loading relational data. This is through stitching of data, so you can basically get one endpoint and have it able to pick pieces of information from different tables and put them together in a way that makes sense and return that to the user. You can also be able to put several requests together and get that response to the user. Yeah, you also have an increased in performance since the request size is reduced. This is where the allowing of front-end developers to have their clients fetching only the data that they need comes in. So say we have a database where we have a user with their first name, their last name, their bio, their credit scores and all that, and we only need to display their first name and last name. The front-end developers in this case can make a request and only fetch the first and last name. This significantly reduces the size of the response and can make things a lot easier and more efficient on the network. Yeah, an increased flexibility on requests. This also builds on the previous point. This is because, just as I mentioned, the front-end developers can specify which pieces of information they require. Cleaner data retrieval also builds on the same. Yeah, you don't need to get anything that you're not going to make use of. And you'll also notice the data comes in already arranged, and the front end has an easier time just passing the data to the client. So what is Post Graphile? You may be wondering. Yeah. This is where the fun begins. This is why we are all here. Yeah, so let's look into this exciting open source library. So PostGraphile, which was previously known as PostGraphQL, pairs GraphQL with Postgres databases to allow developers to take a different approach towards building their APIs. So basically, a database-driven development approach where the focus is on building your code as close to the database as possible. This, as a result, means your application is a lot more stable. You have a less likely chance of making bugs. And best of all, you write very little code. Yeah. So basically what PostGraphile does is it allows the developers to focus on the product rather than the structure and all that, since it does all that for you. Yeah, so PostGraphile can be used in three main ways. They have a CLI which you can install and quickly use to spin up your applications, and that's actually what we're going to use today. You can also apply it as middleware on top of a Node.js server, and they also have a Docker image that you can download and use. So let's create our demo application. This is where I face one of my worst fears, live coding. But here we go. So before we get started, you need two main things, two main requirements that PostGraphile requires for you to get started, and that's Node.js and Postgres. So for Node, you need version 8.6 or higher, and for Postgres, you need 9.6 or higher. Yeah, so let's get started. So basically, what we want to do first is set up our database. As mentioned before, it's a database-driven development approach, and yeah. So let's get on it. So our first step naturally is to start Postgres. So you'll run guru services start. Yes. So I think I already had it running. Yes. So the next step is to create a database. So create. So what do we want to name our database? Any ideas? Okay. Just yeah.
Post Graphile test. Maybe.
I was hoping for something adventurous.
Graphile developerISH.
Yeah, that's I like that word. Yeah, so once we've created a database, we'll want to install PostGraphile if you don't have it installed already. So you can, do that by running npm install PostGraphile. So for our case, since we're using the CLI, we'll install it globally so that you can be able to make use of it anywhere. Yeah, then after that, you'd want to run PostGraphile and connect it to your database. So since I already have PostGraphile installed, I'll just connect it to our database here. So Graphile. Right, so what you'll notice here is PostGraphile will run and connect directly to your database and watch it for changes. So it offers two main endpoints, and those are the GraphQL API and the GraphQL UI that basically is the GraphQL playground that you can be able to quickly view and play around with your API on. So basically, it looks something like this. This is it when it's empty, and as you can see, we'll have somewhere where we can fill in our requests and some documentation as well. Right, so the next step would be now to set up our tables and our schema for our database. So basically, in Postgres, before the table level, we have a schema or a namespace. This is where all the details, the rules, and all those settings of a table are housed. You can read more about it under the Postgres docs, which I will have linked at the end of the presentation. So first, before we do anything, we need to create our schema. But first, we need to connect to Postgres. So you connect by running PSQL and then the name of your table. So PSQL Graphile developerISH. As you can see here, we are now connected to our database, and now we are ready to continue with our setup. So the next step for us would be to create our schema. So basically, for schemas, you have a number of levels of permissions that they may be allowed on. You have the public, and this holds the tables and functions that would be exposed to GraphQL. You have the private, which holds secrets that have elevated privileges, and you have the app hidden, which is basically the same as the public, but is not exposed to GraphQL. So for our case, we'll basically use the default, which is public. And so let's create one right now. So we want to create a schema. Fish. So now that we have our schema, our next step would be to create our tables. So in our case, in the slides, I have examples from a blog post that I wrote before on the same topic. I think we can use pretty much the same tables and make some changes, then maybe we can play around with them a bit later. So yeah, let's get at it. So our first table would be authors and our second will be posts. So basically what I made for this is a simple blog API where we have authors who have posts under their name. And so for each author, we have the ID, which is the primary key, the username, which is the unique identifier that you may use to search for them. You have the first name, last name, and a short bio. And for posts, we have the ID, which is also the primary key. We have the headline, which is basically the topic for that blog post, and the body, which is text. This is where it gets exciting. You see here we have something called references. This is where this is what we use to create the relationship between these two tables. So basically, what we have here is we set up the author ID as a field inside the table to reference the author, which is the person who wrote this specific post. And lastly, we have the created at, which is a timestamp relating to when we created the table. And this is set as not null. This means that by default, it should never be entered as empty. So yeah, let's try that out. So create table. So what was the name of our schema again? developerISH. developerISH dot the, so it will be the schema dot the name of the table. So in our case, developerISH dot authors. What fields do we have here? We'll have the ID, is the primary key. Username, needs to be unique and not null. So we don't have a user without a username. First name. And then does it have to be unique? Last name. Text. And a bio. It's text, but can be optional. Hey, I think I made a mistake somewhere. Okay. Okay, something is odd here. Oh, okay. I have a trading comma. Okay, so as you can see, the Postgres is a bit strict when it comes to its syntax. Just because of a trailing comma, you can be stuck there trying to debug. So we got lucky, we found that early. So yeah, we have our first table. So let's create the second table, which is post. So again, the name of our schema, the name of the table, and the fields. So ID again. So the primary key. Headline. Or do you prefer to call it title? Then let's make our reference. The ID, which references created at. So the default basically means that if no parameter is provided, this is what we'll use. And interesting. Yeah, so now we have our two tables. Let's go over to the playground and yeah. So hold on. So as you can see here, PostGraphile will be watching for changes and making changes to our GraphQL endpoint and updating it every time that we update our tables. So basically, what we want to do is insert some data first into the table so that we can be able to fetch. So basically, going to create two users inside our database. Insert. So we need to provide our username. So basically what we're going to do is very similar to what we have here. These are a couple of users again that I had for a test application that was building before. But just to make things interesting, maybe we can create some of our own. Yeah. So who wants to be added?
Me.
Same here.
Okay. All right. So who wants to go first? Ladies first.
So
Okay. Give me a username.
Joy Kari.
First name.
Joy.
Last name. Curry.
Or maybe Warogo.
And short bio.
Wait. Serial series watcher.
Okay. Who wants to go next?
I think you missed out on our closing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Maybe enter this first. Oh. Wow. Okay. So we've inserted one entry, and yeah, let's add another. So who wants to go next?
Howie.
Sorry?
Howie. Howie. Caesar. Caesar. Okay. Yeah.
Like that.
Yes.
First name.
It's very Howie.
Last.
Obiambo.
Bio.
To be or not to be?
Yeah, so now we've inserted two values. So next we'll just go to our GraphQL playground and see what changes we have. So I'll just refresh this. So we want to make a query to our endpoint. So we'll run query. So we should have. Okay, I think I need to restart this server. Hold on a second. It should automatically refill. Let's see first. So you see here, only posts are allowed. Okay, I think we are running. Right. So we should have a couple of endpoints already provided by default. One of them should be all others. This is odd. Let's try something out first. Let me just check real quick if we have our data in our database. Okay, so we have our data here. Okay. I'm wondering why our schema is not showing up. Let me see.
Have you tried switching it off and on again?
Yeah, let me try that. In fact, let me just do this. Okay, let's try this again. We have a schema. Okay. Wow. Okay. Something is not quite right. I don't think it's picking up our changes. Let me see if we can make any mutations. Wow. Let me try connecting to the server that was already created. Let's see if we have Okay, something is not quite right. I will have to investigate this.
Maybe you can demo with an existing schema you have that you had made before.
I think I just cleared it before this.
Or is there a way to confirm the schema has been saved?
Oh yeah. So as you can see here, like we're able to fetch the data that we had before. So I think there's just something that needs to be updated somewhere. Let me try updating this thing. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what's wrong here. I may need to look into it, but so what I can do is I'll look into this and maybe share what I find a little later, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then you can use your slides to show us what should have happened.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so basically just following through the slides, this is the data that I had added before. And so basically what we would expect to see going into the GraphQL playground would be something like this. So basically for our case, we'd have like, I'm sorry if the image is not that clear, but we'd have a number of queries that would be generated by PostGraphile. So basically it would create all your basic CRUD operations. So you'll be able to fetch all authors, fetch a single author by ID, fetch a single post, fetch all the posts by a given author, and also get a single author. So basically, if you look at our screenshot here, sorry again if it's not that clear, but basically this is a query to get all the authors and get their username, first name, and bio. So basically, you'd structure your API call to get the information that you need. You could feel free to leave out any fields that you feel you don't require. So say you only need the first name and last name and the bio, you don't need the username, you can feel free to leave that out and you'd get your response here. And if you want to create a post in GraphQL, you have queries and mutations. So basically the queries take care of fetching data and mutations take care of either updating, deleting, or creating data. So in this case, we have an API call to create a post. And so you basically feed in the input as the query variables, and it would create a post providing the headline, the body, and the created that would autofill. Yeah. So
2 minutes asking.
Yeah.
From the YouTube chat, Benji mentioned that you needed to pass schema devish. I put it on the chat on Jitsi. You can see, maybe try, see whether that works.
I try what?
It's on the chat on Jitsi.
Hold 1 second. Oh my god. Okay. Let's try that. I guess they've updated this since I last played around with it. Awesome. Yeah, I think that was it. Yeah, so I think the API has changed a bit, but basically, yeah, this is what would happen. You'd be able to get all posts. And so for each type of query, you can specify whether you the order you want them to, whether they meet a specific set of conditions, all that. This is what PostGraphile will do for you. It will be able to just generate for you all the CRUD operations that you need. Just as I mentioned, you can be able to get all your authors here and order by, say, so you can say ascending by or descending by a specific field or natural. You can also get all posts. You can get posts by ID. So let's do this. Let's get all authors. And so we want the let's say we want the first name, and bio. We don't need the username. Maybe we get the username. And if we run that, as you can see here, we're able to get the first name, the last name, and the bio of the user. And so let's say we want to create a post, right? So we'd say, let me just clear all of this mutation. So if we come back here and go under mutation, we have create author, create post, update, just as I mentioned. So mutations will take care of updating and deleting, and queries will take care of fetch. So say we want to create a post. Yeah. So basically, as you can see here, it creates a great documentation for every single API endpoint that you need. So say, okay, which user do we want to create a post for? So so say when we create a post, we want to return the post body, and we want the head, the title, and the body. So as you saw, let me find our slides. As you saw in the slides, we'll feed in our query variables underneath the request. So we are provided with this area over here, and it should look something similar to this. So we are calling it input, and so we can find the fields that we need to enter here, and basically we need a post, and it needs to have a title. So give me a title. Anything?
I'm Batman.
I think that's and body. This looks better.
I'm vengeance.
Sorry?
I am vengeance.
I am?
Vengeance.
Oh, nice. Understood that reference. And we also need the author ID. So say we choose to have how we have created this. So created that will autofill, since you remember we set it to have a default. I think I'm missing one closing bracket somewhere. Let's close this. Oh, do not need this. Okay. Yeah. Oh, so we specified that the value is an integer, and you see there we decided to try and pass it as a string, so that would fail, and we received that one in there. So that's another one of the great advantages of GraphQL. You get cleaner warnings. Yeah. So let's try running that. Let's see.
I think it needs a exclamation mark at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. So you see there, we have been able to create the post. The title is "I am Batman." The body is "I am Vengeance." So, say we decide to fetch it. Go for query. Posts. And we want our title. Our body, and we want author ID. So yeah, you can see there we're able to get all our posts, and we are also able to. So basically, this is what is so great about Post Graphile. In a few minutes, you can be able to set up a whole application. And another great thing is it's also really, really easy to document. So say if I wanted to create a comment on a specific table, basically what I would do is come to Postgres here and say comments table. So developerISH. Rock 3 amps. I'd be able to get that comment on the table. So if I come back here and go to, let's see, just a second. Oh, there was a mistake somewhere. This should be single quotes. To refresh this. See if any changes were picked up. Okay, let me just try restarting it. Yeah, so as you can see, our comment shows up. So you can easily use this to document your API endpoints and your data, basically creating a well-documented and robust API within a very short time. Yeah. Oh, and another added advantage is the fact that you can be able to combine fields and have calculated fields using the built-in GraphQL functions. I don't think I'll go into that right now because of time, but you can find more on that in the documentation. Yeah. So basically, that's what PostGraphile can do for you. You'll be able to easily and quickly set up your backend API within seconds. Sorry, not seconds, minutes. And you can be able to just focus on creating your data rather than writing your code. So as you've seen today, it's basically been a matter of planning out and laying out our data rather than trying to find out which is the best structure to write our code in. And yeah, that really saves a lot on development time. So I have a couple of useful materials linked here. There's a blog post I wrote on this same topic on BlogRocket. You'll find it linked here. You also have links to documentations from GraphQL, PostGraphile, and Postgres for those who want to dive deeper into any of these technologies. And there's also a talk by the maintainer of PostGraphile at GraphQL Summit. It was really interesting. He was able to set up something within really, was it like 5 minutes? It was quite an interesting talk. I strongly suggest checking that out. Yeah. So I think that is pretty much it. Thanks for coming. Yeah.
Okay. Let's clap silently for Austin. Yeah, thank you, Austin. It was a long session of sharing knowledge, and I'm so fascinated by GraphQL. I actually started doing it just 2 days ago, and then I see today doing it again. So that one has cemented a bit of my knowledge. And then the fact that it self-documents its API is just mind-blowing. Okay, so guys, Joy has just reminded me that the person who created GraphQL was on YouTube with us.
Oh, wow.
Graphile.
Post Graphile. Sorry, Post Graphile. How good is that, man?
Oh, wow, that's pretty cool.
Also the guy who helped us, Austin, when we were trying
Yeah.
to get the schema.
Yeah. Yeah, live
Wow.
coding is one of my biggest fears.
You come out to memento if those people can attend our, I really don't know what to say, but that was wonderful. So I'm going to share my screen first and see the polls that we've been having. Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, just a minute. Um,
Live stream is on.
Guys, if you're still on the call, you can still go to slido.com and enter this ID and vote for the questions that you have.
I'm trying to get the question deck from Slido to share.
I've linked it in the chat.
I think as it stands, there's only one question.
The polls are changing. And what's your beef with Bitbucket? It's still in your bucket list.
Wow.
Well.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Looking here, I think there's one question. I can answer it as people continue to vote on the poll. What in your opinion, is the benefit of database-driven development as opposed to the traditional approach? And also, what is the traditional or common approach? Right. So from the times that I've been messing around and playing around with PostGraphile, I think one huge advantage of DB-driven development is you will have fewer bugs since you're writing less code. There'll be fewer cases where you end up passing invalid data in your code, since the code itself is influenced by the data stored in the databases. So you avoid things like typos, invalid variables. Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone else have questions? You could just ask them straight line.
And I think there's another part to that question. What is the traditional or common approach? Yeah, so I think the traditional approach is you set up your DB totally separate from your code and maybe write a separate server to go in and fetch, manipulate, and enter data from your DB. So any errors in your code would result in maybe errors in the database. And yeah, I think though that approach has its benefits, it also has its pitfalls.
Okay. Anyone from the community have any questions on Jitsi? I think Poslack is having problems with his internet.
Yeah, I have one. Thanks, Austin, for the awesome presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, are you able to write tests when you go with database-driven development?
Yeah, so it depends with the approach you take. Like I mentioned, you can either use it as middleware on top of your own Node.js server, in which case I believe writing tests should be fairly straightforward. And I'm yet to mess around with the other approach of using the Docker image as a means of development, maybe if somebody has, they can let us know. But as for the approach where you apply it as middleware, your Node.js tests would look similar to any other backend JavaScript test that you may write. Yeah, I've also not yet tried testing with the CLI yet. That's something to look forward to, I guess.
There's another question on the chat on Slido. How do you handle authorization in this kind of model?
In this kind of model, yeah. So this is where your database functions and calculated fields would come in. You can be able to write functions that would be able to go through the user information and find your own and find the specified the user that meets the specified credentials. You can also be able to, again, you're not limited to the CRUD operations that have been generated by this endpoint. You should be able to add your own on top. This is basically just a step towards making that easier for you. So it would basically be really, really similar to the same approach that you take with a regular application.
Cool. Do you have any more questions from the audience? I can't see any on the chat. Oh, there's one more. Does PostGraphile handle data caching? I.e. caching, stroke caching.
I have not looked into that. I will be honest, I have not tried looking into that.
If you don't have any answers to any of your questions now, we could send them out on Twitter.
Yeah, I think that's I can do some research on the caching. I think we'll be sharing a couple of questions that will be posted even after the talk, so we'll take a look at those and I can let you know what I find.
Yeah. Any more questions from anyone? If no, thank you so much, Austin, for this talk. Please, everyone, give him snaps or claps on the chat. There's a form you could fill as a survey. Oslak sent it on the chat. I can send it on the YouTube live also. Please send us back your feedback. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate you for being here. And thank you, Oslak, for being our MC. We'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.
Bye.
See you guys on the next one. Bye.
Bye.
Live streaming has stopped.
It's a wrap, Moy.
Hey, Austin, did you see who was there?